Mustafa, Theo, thanks for both joining me today. I've been really excited to meet you for a while now to find out more about MishiPay. I know you're operating globally with several office locations and you're in stores in more than 14 countries. I'm excited to learn more about the company. I think it makes sense to start from the beginning. So what inspired the launch of this great company?
Nice to be here. Thanks for having us, Courtney. From the beginning, so you want me to start with my own story? 7 years ago now, it's when we started, a little bit more than seven. This year, August was our seventh anniversary. But a little about me, I'm Indian of origin, born and brought up in Kuwait, and then came to the UK in 2011 to do my mechatronic engineering degree at the University of Manchester. And then came to London to UCL to do my engineering and finance. And at the end of that master's is when I had the idea for MishiPay. I was waiting at Lidl, 20 minutes to buy a Coke. Wasn't my first time waiting, but for some reason at that time I had the idea that, why are we still doing this? It's the 21st century, it makes no sense. What's possible on the cash register should easily be possible on my smartphone even then, right? So the simple idea was, why not scan the barcode of the item, the Coke that was in my hand, pay for it and leave the store.
Yeah.
Right. And then I thought, okay, what about theft? What about other ways? But overall, it looked like it could be done, right? There were ways to ensure security against theft via RFID. Later on, I realized that we didn't need RFID. We could use the staff for verification or have self-verification with the shoppers as long as we could detect safe versus suspicious. I thought, what about the integration to the retailer systems? But with the cloud, you can have one central, node that connects to all the retailer systems and compiles the information together. So it was starting to form in my head. I went back. I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I started working on it. Luckily, I had some programming experience from my engineering days. Not, I wouldn't say I was the best software engineer, as I realized 2-3 months later when I built the first prototype and I realized I needed more help. So that's when I brought on my co-founder and now former CTO of ours, Tanvi, who joined me. She's a very close friend of mine, one of my best friends who I knew since University of Manchester. So she came on, and then from there we started to build. 3 years later, we brought on Theo, who joined us in 2018 and now is, progressed to Chief Product Officer and has taken over everything from product to engineering to all really big technical aspects in terms of what we do. Especially since earlier this year when Tanvi exited the business, all that responsibility also flowed into Theo. Over the years, it's been a very exciting journey for us, lots of ups and downs, but things have caught up and, especially recently, the growth has been phenomenal.
No, nice. I think it's impressive that you had an idea, but you actually took action on that as well. Let's say I'm a store. What would I need to do then to actually implement the product, and what type of timescales would I be looking at?
So now we have two main products, Scan, Pay, and Go, as well as our own self-checkout kiosk. The kiosk is like the more traditional experience that you've seen in your grocery or your convenience. You go to a tablet area, you scan something into a laser scanner, the item pops up on a screen with creating a basket, you pay on a terminal and you leave, right? So we have a version of this which is very small footprint, very, very low capex, that integrates seamlessly with a Scan and Go, so a user can transfer the basket to Scan and Go. Together between this and Scan and Go is how we're getting to 90% adoption in the stores. But to make it live, the retailer has the same process for both of them. You simply have a 2-week period where we plug into the existing systems. The product catalog, the promotions, the payment gateway, the loyalty, the reconciliation, the POS, all of these we integrate into without the retailer making any change to their existing infrastructure. That's very important. Because if a retailer has to change something, it'll end up getting much longer as a process. They will say the internal cost is high, how do we get it done? But because we've got the experience of integrating with so many retailers, we have about 30 plus million items on our own database. We have integrated with 15 POS systems, 15 payment gateways. We have got the experience to say, keep it where it is, whether with flat file or API, we simply plug into what you have.
Okay.
And it's, that's how Theo and his team make us very quickly integrate to new retailers and they can switch on. Then the user just goes into the store. They don't even have to download. Using our web app, they scan a QR code to go straight on the browser to mishipay.com. And from there, they can start scanning items, pay, and just leave.
Nice. Sounds like a great product. Definitely one I wish my local store had as well. It's quite clear there's benefits for the end user, but what would you guys say is the main benefits for the actual stores themselves?
In terms of the product benefits for the retailer, the B2B side,
Yeah.
the way I think about it now is that, everything on business to business has to boil down to making money or saving money, right? If you're not able to prove to your customer that you can make or save money in a very clear way, then, there's almost no point to the B2B product. Whether it is through a better customer experience, through saving time, it has to come down to making money or saving money. So that's the division between the two products. The kiosk, the self-checkout kiosk is very clear for saving money.
Yeah.
When the retailer deploys it, almost all the retailers can reduce their checkout staff by 50%, right? They can reduce from 4 cashiers to 2 cashiers, from 8 to 4. They can then use that resource and use it on the floor to provide more staff for assisted sales, to provide more staff in back office replenishment. So it does have some impact on making money, but the immediate impact is on saving money. Whereas on Scan and Go, the impact is about making money. It's about increasing the sales in 3 ways. With convenience stores, it's because the users who would have otherwise abandoned the basket are now coming back to purchase. So think of it like in your fuel station store or your Airport W.H. Smith, for example, or other such stores. We have so many stores with Paradise or Hudson News. In these stores, your propensity to abandon is very high.
Yeah.
You're not going to miss your flight for the sake of the Coke or for the sake of the Red Bull.
Definitely not.
So you're much more likely to say, forget it, I'm not going to buy. So they lose 5-6% of their sales. There, we are able to bring back 4% of the sales. So increase the sales per store by 4%.
Yeah.
Now, in a grocery, it's slightly different. You still need to eat when you go back. So you're not going to abandon the basket as easily. You still may, but you will come back less often. You will not come back for a small basket. You will not come in at peak times. There, we were able to see that users who use MishiPay come back 33% more often than those who do not.
Yeah.
So the impact is on a per user basket who is buying 14% more than they used to. And then in fashion and accessories, it's all about the quality of time. So if I used to spend 30 minutes, 25 minutes shopping, 5 minutes checking out, with MishiPay, I spend more than 29 out of 30 minutes shopping.
Yeah.
And a few seconds checking out. So my quality of time is directly proportional to size and value of basket. So there we see about a 35% increase in basket value at like Flying Tiger, Muji, such brands.
Yeah. And even for myself, if I'm in an airport, as soon as I see a busy queue, I don't actually go in.
Exactly. So they don't even know how much they could be losing from people who just don't go in there. And then, we also have other value in terms of the data that the retailer can get, the accessibility to the user. Those are other impacts. I don't know if you think I've missed anything there. What do you...
Perhaps we can double down on one of the products that makes money is the item recommendations, right?
Okay.
Because this is very unique. Traditionally, when you think of item recommendations, right, you think of e-commerce. You add an item to your basket and you see a carousel saying, people who bought this also bought that, right? Yeah. Now, this is very interesting because it actually brings a lot of money to the retailers, right? McKinsey has published a report that mentions that almost 1 out of 3 items sold on Amazon comes from this carousel, from the item recommendations. Now, you take that and you think, how can I apply it inside the physical store? Well, today it's very, very hard to do it, right? Traditionally, you would count on the store staff to approach you, look at practically what you have already in your basket and try to guess, try to make recommendations, right? So that is obviously not scalable and also depends on the staff, right? Is the staff knowledgeable about it? Do the staff have a really good sense of what to actually recommend to you? So how can you codify that? Well, we did a lot of testing, right, in order to prove that, because creating the recommendations, okay, that's something that can be achieved, right? You just need the right kind of technology, the right kind of algorithms to put together the recommendations. But think about it, inside the physical store, if I recommend to you something that is not near you, all of a sudden we have a problem, right? Like if you are in aisle 3 of your local hypermarket and I recommend to you something that is on a different floor or even like 2 aisles next to you, you're not going to all of a sudden start like a discovery hunt inside
No,
your...
definitely not.
Exactly. And at the same time, it also needs to be in stock. right? What if you actually find the item, but you don't see anything there? Again, it's a very, very
You
bad.
find the location, but the shelf is empty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we decided to bring it, we suddenly started realizing, hey, wait a minute, there are actually many different things that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, because online, where you have an item, you're on the page, and it says people who bought this also bought these other items,
seen
right?
that.
That's a very common way online to market things. The stock online is in a distribution center, even though oftentimes retailers have stock problems, but still they can recommend you something more easily because it's just a click of a button. You don't actually have to find the item inside the store. For us, yes, we can do that. We have a journey for scan, pay, and choose delivery. So we could give you something that you buy on e-commerce, but during that journey where you're right now buying something inside the store, it's not the right time to do that. So there, what Theo is saying is that it has to be something that you can grab very close to you.
Definitely.
So that is, I guess, one other improvement, something that we brought to the physical store that builds on top of this unique element of trying to bring the best of the online shopping.
And the impact can be quantified.
Exactly, can be quantified because obviously we run A/B tests, right? Like, let's give these recommendations, these carousels to, let's say, 50% of the people who scan an item and not show it to the rest. Otherwise, you always fall into this trap where the retailers are questioning it. They're like, how do I know they actually bought something because of that carousel?
What if they would have bought it anyway?
Exactly. All right. But so we decided to A/B test it with thousands of users, and we actually saw some stunning results. We saw increases on the basket up to 65%. Wow. All right.
On top of the existing increase that we already had
Yeah.
versus the store average, MishiPay's own basket was 65% higher with item recommendations than without.
Nice. I see on your website you've got some great case studies. It's always really good to see. Is there one that stands out as your biggest success story?
I guess our largest customer in the world, Flying Tiger Copenhagen, right, is a case study, as well as Muji, which is one of the top 5 customers for us in the world. These two were very important clients that we signed, in the midst of the pandemic. So it was, a tough time when these two came in. So very, very good that they showed us that confidence. They gave us that opportunity, and we've really shown them some of the best results that they could have hoped for. So in the case of Muji, they saw 25% increase in basket value. Wow. That's when they went from one store in the UK to all of the UK to now several countries having MishiPay: Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Italy, a couple in Spain, one in France. So they're really expanding with us, not just in geographically, but also in terms of the products. They have Scan and Go. They have self-checkout kiosk, as well as our item recommendations and click and collect. So they really have almost the whole suite. Same thing on Flying Tiger side. They started with us in a 30-store pilot in the Nordics. We published about that. That resulted in us getting 24 more stores in London about 8 months after that launch. And then 6 months after that launch, we signed a 200-store contract with them for all the Nordics and the UK for Scan and Go, self-checkout kiosk, click and collect, and delivery. So that also takes on the whole suite, and that's on the back of a 35% increase in basket value, as well as the sort of stability and performance of MishiPay. Those are the, you can't exactly quantify it. Of course, there are things like uptime, etc., on which we were very good, but it's also the general chemistry of working with us that they really appreciated. So from the sheer success, revenue-wise, those two are very important. There are a few others that we've not launched yet that are coming up that are also going to be exciting.
Are you able to talk about them today?
I think I can talk about it more holistically is the US, right? So I launched our first, our US subsidiary, I think in November, December 2020, in terms of the first customer that signed. That was the Paradis Lagardère, right? Okay. They were, it's public information because it was published by Forbes as well, the expansion we did with them. That was our first customer in the US. And since then, now we're live with them in about 26 airports and about 36 stores. So it's grown very, very well for us and resulted in us now seeing 50% of our sales coming from the US, because we have about 9 other customers, including them. 9 other customers after them that we were able to sign, who kept bringing on the big revenue, signing on Scan and Go, signing on kiosk, and really expanding very quickly into more stores. And just last week we've signed our first apparel customer in the US. We can't announce the name just yet, but it'll come out in the next couple of
I'll keep
months.
an eye on the news.
Yes. The first apparel customer. It's a 1,000-store retailer.
Yeah.
Some very famous brands, and should be very, very exciting.
I think what's the most impressive is that people are starting to work with you, but they're then sticking with you. Like the retention seems really good, and then they're wanting to use your products across all of their stores.
Exactly. Expanding the number of stores is super important.
So does that mean you're not really bound by a territory? It's more like you start working with a company or a store, and then they want you to do their other stores. Will you then do all of the stores, or are there certain territories you don't touch?
So within an existing customer, if they want us to expand, sure, we'd start out their stores. But we would outbound not go to get stores in a region that is not one of our key focus regions.
Okay.
That's the US, the UK and Northern Europe, and Middle East. These are our three key regions, right? US is the largest single region with 50%. Middle East now is very quickly become 15% just in the last 6 months of growth. That's why I'm traveling to Dubai like a maniac. And then we have our original market, Europe, which is still good, still strong with some big customers, but not as fast growing as these other two.
Yeah.
And that's about 35 to 38% of our sales. So, when you divide it across these three, in these ones, especially the UK, the US, and UAE/Saudi, there we're outbound going actively to find clients.
Yeah.
Now, let's say that you sign a client in UK, Muji, the way we did. And they have stores all across Europe. They're like, okay, we loved what we were able to do in the UK. Now let's expand across the board. Sure, with that one, we would expand.
Yeah.
But we would not go actively out there in those other countries like, Spain, France, etc., with teams on the ground, right? We'd appreciate inbound interest coming there and we might talk to them. But it's very difficult then because it becomes a lot of operational work.
Yeah.
Because MishiPay is a technology that's in the hands of the user. So we still have to do a lot in making sure marketing is right inside the store. The staff are on site. They're not thinking that this is a rival or an enemy for their work, right? They have to understand why this helps them achieve a larger commission, a faster commission. And doing all that while still ensuring our stability, while still ensuring great customer experience, requires a lot of on-the-ground effort from us. Now, after success, if the retailer is happy to take on that effort and launch in those other territories, we'd love for them to do that. But we won't be actively pursuing other territories until we're ready to put people on the ground and make that happen.
That makes sense. So you've got your key focus markets, but you're also expanding with your clients at sort of their request.
Exactly,
That makes sense. Are there any other products out there similar? If so, how does MishiPay differ?
So there are a few, there's two ways you can look at it. There's the direct competitors and there's the competing budget interest, right? I think on the competing budget interest, you have it like a spectrum. Okay, on one end you have self-checkout kiosks, the original traditional kind of self-checkout kiosk that you see in your groceries. Okay, on the other end you have computer vision, Amazon Go style.
Exactly.
And the traditional ones are great for saving money. That's the clear use case, but it's high capex, not so easily scalable, and people don't like the user experience. But it's reliable. You know what you're going to get. You know what you pay for it. That it'll reduce cost in a certain way. On the other end, if you look at the computer vision, it's extremely expensive, but it's an amazing user experience. Walk in, pick up an item, walk out, right? And as an engineer, I appreciate it. But the problem is that almost no retailer out there, at least none of our target, can afford it, especially at scale. So everyone is doing small tests or POCs or one or two stores as a marketing tactic, which it's a good marketing tactic, actually. It pays back on one or two stores, but they're not scaling. Not even Amazon, right? What was the last thing they said in the report?
I mean, in July, they announced themselves through the quarterly updates that they will only open 3 more Amazon Go stores this year, with the original target back in 2017 being 2,000 stores. Right. So they themselves, the ones that actually
It's a big difference.
Exactly. And think about it, right?
And they themselves have pivoted to saying that we're going to sell it B2B now, right? Into other retailers. So we can't scale it. even though they seem to have infinitely more money than most retailers out
An
there.
army of developers and engineers, right? This is a hard problem to solve right now. And if they cannot solve it, then
How can they expect other retailers to pay enough to deploy? So there's that. And we sort of see ourselves in the middle.
Yeah.
We have, okay, it's not as easy as pick up and leave. It is scan, pay and leave. But even when you do that, it's still much better and faster than the traditional one or the self-checkout kiosk. We have our own version of a self-checkout kiosk because the benefit of the kiosk is that it already has the awareness created in the user's mind. What's the biggest challenge with Scan and Go is telling users about it.
Yeah.
Because they need to find out there's a way to do this, etc. There's 10 to 20 years of knowledge already created about self-checkout kiosks, depending on where you're from in Europe or US, that you have already been using for a long time. So now that you have that, the awareness and education has been, the expensive part has been done.
Yeah.
So we can leverage that with our own version of a kiosk. The same way as, Uber put iPhones in the drivers' cars saying rides will come. We put our kiosk in the store, transactions come. We use that awareness and attention to transfer those transactions to Scan and Go, which is a much higher value customers.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's what we're doing. And this satisfies all the requirements according to the retailers. Low CapEx, reasonable OpEx, great customer experience, but also something that allows them on the ROI side to both save and make money, and which can scale to 100 stores at the switch of a button, right? So from 1 to 100 stores, we can go, or 100 to 1,000, we can go. We don't have to have huge deployment periods or installations inside the store that have to alter the store layout.
Definitely. How many people have actually downloaded the mobile app, roughly?
According to overall in our lifetime, because remember that originally we started with our white label app. That was another mistake that I had made early on in the strategy. There were three key ones. There was the fact that we started by white labeling according to each retailer. So if you were a Decathlon, we did Decathlon Scan and Go powered by MishiPay. MediaMarkt Saturn, we did Saturn Express powered by MishiPay. Then we did, and this was not scalable at all. We realized that we have to have one app across all stores, and it has to be the first experience on web.
Yeah.
So on web at the moment, we have more than 100,000 new users a month, right?
Really impressive.
Amongst that, overall in our lifetime in native apps at the moment, we have in our lifetime 100,000 users.
Yeah.
So we've not yet pushed the native app as the key way, because still for most people, it's just the first time that they've used MishiPay.
Yeah.
So the web app was a key part. The second part was, as I said before, moving away from RFID, which became, as a requirement, made our market too small, too niche. When I said that you don't have to have RFID to work with MishiPay, it expanded the market for us, but it required us to come up with our trust engine to show safe versus suspicious shoppers. And finally, we also needed the integration capability to be this fast, to be able to go live in 2 weeks with enterprise retailers with enterprise level systems.
Yeah.
That, it was not a mistake. It was just the work that had to be put in, right? There was no shortcut to doing it. You had to have enough experience to build the automation around it, which we have now. So that part was overall, how we looked at it. And that's why early on, we didn't immediately start native users from day one. We white label, which we then scrapped at the end of 2019, beginning 2020. We went to our own app, started with web, and now are starting to push the repeat users, people who've used it 2, 3, 4 times over to native. Because what we see through our analytics is once you've used MishiPay 4 times, you're never going back to traditional checkout in that store where we are live.
No, definitely. If there's the option to use your products, there's no way I'd be standing in a queue.
Yes, and regardless of a queue, once you've used us 4 times, even on non-busy periods, off-peak times, you will still use your own phone because you just prefer it.
Well, nowadays you have your phone with you at all times, don't you? Everything happens with
Exactly.
your phone now. Theo, you've obviously joined the business, was it 5, 6 years?
4.5 years ago.
Okay, perfect. And you're in this chief product officer role. How have you been able to shape and steer the product in your time at the company?
Oh, of course. I mean, we've made some fundamental changes, as Mustafa just mentioned, right? So to begin with, there was the safety and focus from RFID to anyone, all right? And that was something that when I joined, it seemed a little bit more natural to me. I was like, yeah, why not everyone? Then it was a little bit of a debate with Mustafa and others in terms of what are we going to do in terms of the checkout journey? How are we going to handle
As an engineer, I always wanted the things to fit very well, but that's not how retail works.
Yeah, of course.
It's always a little bit of a compromise. So the way I thought RFID worked well. You pay, it disables, it just in software, you leave the store, no alarm. If you haven't paid, there's an alarm. So it's beautiful in that way, but the infrastructure requirement is impossible.
But think of it like when I joined, right? You come in with a clean mind, and from a product perspective, you think about the user, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going in a store. First of all, 90% of the people probably don't even know what an RFID is, right? So as a customer, I'm not like, oh, I'm visiting this retailer, it's an RFID retailer. Let me make sure the EPC tags are disabled. Nobody will think about it, right? So fundamentally doesn't make sense, right? Like it's great from an engineering perspective. It's great to keep that in the back of our mind. But as a customer, do I care? No.
And if a retailer has the right infrastructure, labels and RFID gates and software, EPC printed in QR code, then definitely we will use it, right? We'll leverage that. Like for example, if you go out in the market, you'll see H&M has it that way, Lululemon has it that way. So there you can. But if you ask a new retailer to put that in first, then they'll say, okay, come back to us in 2-3 years. When we've done all that work, then we'll look at MishiPay.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then obviously, I think the next step was to start understanding and formalizing better the value that we are bringing to the table, right? Because when you start, you think, okay, the soapers don't have to wait in a line. Great, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we put a number next to that, right? Is it that now it becomes easier for the soaper, so then they are going to spend more? We didn't know that at that time, right? All the information, all the value proposition that Mustafa talked about were big question marks at the beginning. From actually defining the value, like increasing the sales per customer, per store, repeat value, average basket value, right? All of those things had to be defined to begin with, and then we had to quantify them as well, put a number next to that. So that is primarily the role of product, right? Like going back and forth, building the right thing, and then understanding what is the number next to that. And that obviously comes with a lot of conversation and debates, right? Because you might have a perceived value, but is it actually what the retailer wants? Is it something that they will put their name next to that in a case study and say, yes, this is actually the value? And that's the thing, like MishiPay is the only startup right now, the only company overall that has published such strong case studies today that are also corroborated by the retailers themselves, saying, yes, these are actually the results that we see.
About increasing sales, reducing costs.
Exactly.
Because, you asked about the competition. Sorry, I answered the indirect one, but they're sort of answering the impact against the direct competition. So others who may also do scan and go, right? Like
Skip.
Skip or in the US or Future Proof Retail, a Shopreem who's now bought out by the Umdash Group. And others like that. So these all competitors who are more direct competitors because they do similar stuff with Scan and Go, not in exactly the same way. This is one of our big differences, that our results have been corroborated by the retailers, published in case studies with clear numbers. This is how much MishiPay increased our sales. This is how much it reduced the cost. And then, of course, the technology itself, the web app, the trust engine, as well as the integration layer with our partnerships that we have in place, have allowed us to actually become the largest player as a third-party scan and go into retailers.
I see it, and I was actually looking for case studies from other companies in the market. Really hard to find like actual facts in their case studies. So it's good to see some of the results you've shown people, but the fact you can be so specific with those results as well.
Yeah. I would say the other two who are sort of good results would probably be Sam's Club, own scan and go that they have with Walmart, or Coop in Denmark. These are in-house built. It took them years of development, lots of money, lots more than it would cost to just take MishiPay. But they did spend that. They did take the time, and they have some good results. They've also published some good results. So those are the other ones I would say. If someone wants to look at other good examples,
they're the ones to take a look.
They're the ones to take a look at.
And in your role, Theo, as Chief Product Officer, I'm guessing there's been a lot of challenges for you joining the business and being part of a company that's growing so fast. But
of course.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge so far you've encountered in your role?
I think that in the end of the day, irrespective of the technology or challenges that you're facing, uh, anyone in the C-level is managing people first and foremost, right? In the end of the day, I have teams, all right,
Yeah.
and their success is my success. So practically, very quickly, when you grow from a product manager who works a little bit as an IC, of course, still discussing with many different people, designers and developers, but growing to the C-level, it's mostly about managing the teams, which means managing the people.
Yeah.
All right, and that goes across, let's say, the spectrum from finding and hiring the right people all the way to actually ensuring that they execute correctly, they achieve their goals, and obviously retaining them. Right. So I would say that definitely this is right now becoming, the most challenging part. All right. It requires a lot of focus. It requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of, adjusting your style as well. Not everyone will be managing exactly the same way. Right. And these are skills that obviously you're not going to learn in university, right? They don't have retention of employees one-on-one and what to do, right? So
I think a lot of it comes down to decision making as well. If I had to advise anyone who wanted or mentor, I mentioned that startups die in the land of maybe, right? Whether it's a maybe from your customer who's just stringing you along for too long, from talent you're trying to hire, from your investors, the maybe is what kills you because it's the losing time, right? Even though as a startup you feel like you've just started, time is the most valuable thing you have, the most valuable asset, right?
Definitely.
So what Theo has improved a lot, which I think every manager who's growing quickly has to improve, is making that decision faster and faster. So if I am, on the fence about something, he can help say, okay, let's go this way or that way. And oftentimes people are too afraid of, the consequences of it. But actually, most of the time, I would argue that the consequences are less severe than the consequences of wasting time and taking a longer time to make the decision.
Yeah.
That's the part that is just, the harder the decision, the more you'll be on the fence. But actually, the time that you're losing is so valuable that, even if you do take the right decision but take it too late, it may not be as beneficial as it should be.
Theo, you just talking about your role in terms of trying to get the best out of the people on the team, which I can definitely resonate with myself. You two are obviously in leadership roles. Do you both have a similar leadership style?
No. No. I think it is very important actually to have a fusion of different leadership styles, right? Because especially like Mustafa is giving the vision, he's giving the mission, right? And he definitely as founder and CEO, which is very different to just being like a standalone CEO, let's say. He needs to have a very, very specific style, right? So the rest of the team also needs to complement and support, all right? So whenever you see that, for example, there is this vision like to drive, to go fast, right? You need to support that. But at the same time, whenever he doesn't have the time to focus on something or whenever he delegates, you also need to adopt your style as well so that you can complement, right? So the day that, for example, let's say that he needs to drive the troops, right? To say, hey guys, now this is super important. We need to go in. We need to do that, and you get this very very we need to achieve this goal type of style. That is a day that we also need to take a step back and make sure that everyone understands that. Like try to go and make sure that everyone is there, right? I can go into many more details, but I think that the overall idea is this, right? Every time you need to have the right style for the right people to translate practically that message every single time, right?
Definitely. It sounds like both your styles clearly work well together though.
Yeah, most of the time. There's no relationship which is 100% goes well all the time. I think that's a very important point that I mentioned to anyone asking me about starting a startup or who they should start with, co-founders, or even later on leadership team members like we have with Theo and with Swati now, the C-level. And I oftentimes mention it's the kind of people with whom you can have even a very heated argument. But then, half an hour later, maybe not right the minute after, but half an hour later, go for, a drink together or go out and still be laughing about something else. Because it has to be about the work, but you have to be able to have tough conversations. Because if you don't, we were in a workshop, I think, end of 2019, which was very useful, run by a man in India. We were hired to do that job. His name was, I think, Prashant Kashyap. He does these kinds of coaching workshops and stuff. And he had done the leadership based off of a book,
Yeah,
which
the
was, I think, the
five
five dysfunctions of a team and those kinds of things. And one of the very important areas of that was trust, right? That, if you have the right level of trust, you're willing to speak up, you're willing to have arguments, you're willing to have disagreements without fearing it will damage your relationship, your standing in the company, what you do. And that's a very important piece, right? That they have to feel across the leadership teams and that their teams, own teams and sub teams, within the team at least, even if not within a wider company, because not everyone has the personality to be able to disagree with a leader in front of everyone, but at least within your own team, you have to be able to have open disagreements, right? And be okay with fighting, almost like a brother and sister, or like any other couple in life who will fight a little bit, but have to still be okay with it at the end of the day.
Definitely. I think you need to be able to speak your mind, otherwise things just build up.
Yeah.
And then that can cloud your judgment, I feel.
But at the end of the day, that the other side to it, because we're getting so used to having our freedoms in life, getting so used to having everything the way we want it to be. You have to also be okay with things not going your way.
Yeah.
That what you said, let's go left, and your leader or whoever is the decision maker said, I've heard all the arguments, we're going to go right. Then you can't be saying, if something goes wrong, that I told you so, right? You have to say, that's the team decision, that's what we're all going right. So it's important that second piece is also there, that while you may disagree, once a commitment has been made, a decision has been made, it's time to follow that and really push for that being the right one.
Yeah, so that's like a team decision. Once you've kind
It's
of
a team decision, exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
I see you've been growing steadily since 2015. How many people actually work for the business at the moment?
We're now 35 people, maybe a little bit more by the end of the year. But our team size has been up and down a lot as we've understood where to have the investments, where to consolidate, as the market in terms of geography has changed a lot, right? In 2019, end of 19, beginning 20, 100% of our sales came from Europe, right? Now, 35% of our sales come from Europe, while the company itself, in terms of revenue, has grown probably 20x since then, or maybe 100x since the revenue at that time. So there's, it's really shifted the dynamics of how we're looking at our cost. But overall, the way we think about it still is we're still at that point where we absolutely need people who have to fall into building things or selling things, right? And there might be very, very few, just a handful of people who are not fully fitting in one place. Although right now, I can't think of anyone in the company who doesn't fit into at least one of those brackets. Maybe a couple who fit into both brackets, right? But that's important for us. But yeah, 35 people.
Yeah.
Our biggest team is in Bangalore, in India. Then we have London, we have Dubai, and we have US, where Dallas is where we're based out of.
How many people are actually in the tech department?
I think that's like 65% of the team. So 26 people or so, 26. Maybe 24, I would say. That's the total number of people when you count, also the tech leaders.
Yeah.
So, for example, I count Theo in that.
Yep. Okay.
Right? So I'm not counting only developers, because if you count only developers or people who are involved in development, that might be like 18 or...
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? Like a developer and engineer will need QA, we will need like a designer, we will need the product side. So we take that all together in the build stuff.
As the technical, if you're talking about.
And I know it's very challenging to hire good software engineers.
Very hard.
Like the market's really competitive, especially right now. What's your strategy?
Right now, it's just gotten better.
Do you think it's got better recently?
Yeah. With all the, layoffs, as well as all the what's the word?
Hiring freezes?
Yeah, hiring freezes, but also with a lot of companies who've reduced their staff, right?
Yep.
By 15%, by 25%, by 30%. So that's resulted in a lot of developers sort of, not being able to just dictate demands like before.
Yeah.
Especially in key markets, Bangalore. London. We're not hiring developers anywhere else, but mainly we're hiring in Bangalore right now.
Yep.
We're just started to look at the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi as a market where we might potentially hire developers. In London, we bring developers from Bangalore, so we might hire them in Bangalore, and then
Relocate.
if we think that they would benefit as well as we would benefit from a closer exposure to customers and customer-facing team members, then we might bring them to London or Dubai to be closer to where the action is in terms of stores. Because at the moment we only have one customer in India, which is more like a test customer. But every other customer in our real markets are all outside of India. So those developers, for them to, if they have a lot of context, because we do a huge amount of work, and our big effort of ours is on making sure that context is correctly translated from these markets with the customers to our office in Bangalore. But there's definitely value in being on the ground. So we, even if it's not permanently moving them, we definitely get developers to spend 1 month, 2 month kind of periods in London, in Dubai, close to the customers.
Yeah. Have there been any like big technical challenges you've faced with the product?
Many.
Yeah.
Is there one that stands out?
I mean, definitely the one thing is the scalability, right? Because when you start a company, right, the idea is that you build the minimum viable product, the MVP, right? So you code something really fast, extremely non-scalable most of the times, right? Just to prove that it works, you can see, right? Now, going from that to, let's say, 1 transaction per hour to 1 transaction per minute to, let's say, 10 transactions per minute, these are huge increments, right? That they require you to think about the architecture in a different way. They might require you to make big decisions that it's not very easy to go back to, right? Once you decide that, okay, this is going to be the programming language, for example, this is going to be the infrastructure, right? You cannot wake up 2 months later and say, oh, I changed my mind. Actually, there is something new that we can do, right? So that is, and it will continue being one of the biggest challenges as we are changing from an early stage startup that we were, let's say, 2 years ago, to the amount of scalability, the amount of scale that we need to reach right now in terms of, let's say, the transactions that we're doing every single day, right? As Mustafa mentioned, when we put both our products in a store, get 90% of the store transactions, right? So MishiPay, our servers, if you try to make a mental model of them, they need to run really, really fast to accommodate every single person at the same time, going forward, scanning every item and finishing with their payment.
It seems like you've had a lot of challenges over the time, which I think is normal with a tech startup. Seems like you've learned a lot of lessons as well in your time. And it sounds like you've always been able to overcome everything as well. When COVID-19 obviously struck the world, how did you see the retail market change?
That was a tough one, I think. So we had just moved offices at the time as well, which was the worst timing. I think we had, so we used to be in a WeWork, and then we had taken our own lease in Soho. Now we're back. We're back to co-working offices. We moved because it makes more sense for us, especially given the teams and where things are in the world in terms of our teams being distributed between so many offices. But at the time, as I said, all sales were in the UK, so our plan was to have a bigger UK office. So on the 31st of Jan, we moved into our new office in Soho. And then on the 16th of March, we all went work from home for a good while. So yeah, it definitely was a little bit of a pinch to deal with. We were lucky though in the sense that our investors were very forthcoming, supported us through that period and beyond. Especially when we were raising rounds, etc., from 21 onwards, we were okay for 2020 because we'd just done our Series A before that, led by American Express, at the end of 2019. So we were still not doing badly with the funding sense, but we went from growing, having all of our stores live, more stores going live, to having no stores live. Right, because at the time we did not have any grocery customers, any convenience customers who were deemed as essential goods stores which could stay open. So we went down to 0 transactions again in 2020, like it was in 2017-18. Right, so this felt like we'd suddenly taken a big step back. But actually, that was just a temporary position because in hindsight, it was very strong for us. It was very good because, a couple months later when retailers did start to think about going live again, they had to have MishiPay now.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of interest came through, and that interest has stayed because that pandemic issues turned into labor shortage issues, which are now recession, which has also just opened up the mind to self-checkout possibilities across retailers. Right. You go into, whether it's with a kiosk or scan and go or a handheld, today you go into a Zara, you see self-checkout. You go into an H&M, you see self-checkout. You go into Uniqlo, you see self-checkout. Almost every retailer who 5-6 years ago, when I had just started, I was talking to them, were saying, self-checkout is only for grocery, and that to kiosk. What else do you need? And they were never considering anything else. Now this is a top 3 priority for them.
Yeah.
So the pandemic in that way has turned out to be very good for us, growth-wise. But there were definitely a few months there where I wouldn't have believed it if you said.
I can imagine short term it's very stressful and a real worry, a real uncertain time. But long term, it seems it's really highlighted how effective your product can be.
Exactly. So I did a couple of very tough months. We did some things that I think really helped us get through it. So, I used to do a CEO update, which was effectively me just talking to the team about my thoughts, sometimes philosophy, sometimes deal with other things, once in 2 weeks. And after 16th of March, I did it every day for the next, 1.5 years, then went back to doing it twice a week. Instead of once in 2 weeks, it's twice a week still. But for a good almost 500 days, I did it every day. Spoke to the team every working day, made sure that they had someone they could talk to, made sure we talked about it, got through it together. So in that way, it was also a good time for us to realize, how to work through such difficult situations, how to make sure the team continues to stay together. So it was a big leadership challenge that I think definitely taught me a lot of lessons.
So in that period, did you say you was speaking to the team? Is that also the chance for them to ask you questions as well?
Yes.
I think in that period, everyone needed a bit of comfort. Sounds like you handled that really well.
Yeah, I think on that last one also, the team itself was very nice. I think that ended up, like, a couple of the people who weren't able to really deal with it became very obvious very early on, and that did not work out. But what I'm really happy about is most of the team were really supportive to each other during that time as well. So, while culture as well as, the style is led from the front, led from the top, and I definitely have to set the culture in a certain way for people to get comfortable. The team also has to follow. So the right hiring, as Theo said, it is a people business at the end of the day. So the right hiring is very, very important. You were talking about software engineers as well. So not just software engineers, even software salespeople are extremely hard to find, extremely hard to keep and have the best ones. So all that comes together. But sorry, you were asking the other question.
Yeah, I was just saying, 10 years from now, over the next 10 years, how do you see the retail industry evolving?
Well, for one, we hope all of them are using MishiPay in some form or another, across all retailers as well as users. But no, our dream for us is very clear, right? We want to be the default method you think of when you want to buy anything inside a store, right? You want to buy it, you first try it with MishiPay, and you're surprised if it's not available. Right, working backwards, that means making sure that we're the majority of transactions in the store where we're live. That's starting to happen, where we are now 80-90% of the transactions. Making sure we're the dominant method of checkout in the regions where we are live. That's going to take a lot more effort. And then all over the world. But while we're doing that, we think a lot of other areas will also evolve in retail. I think, I can't say that will be the only change. According to what I see, I think store layouts will massively change to ensure that there's no form of, or very few forms of, human cashiers or human checkouts. Much like you've seen in the restaurant industry, the QSR, right? You'll struggle to order with a human at a McDonald's. They make it so hard for you, right? Because most of the time they're just pushing it to the kiosk. Same thing at a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, right? Most of them you will find the ratio being like 5 self-checkouts for every 1 human can check out. So you'll see that going that way as retailers realize that there's no other way to ensure good profits and a stable business model, as their competitors will move towards that. They have to move towards that. So that will have a massive change in layout, but it won't mean that the human interaction will reduce in the store. They'll be able to invest that for more for more higher value services, like being able to buy larger value items, being able to buy for home delivery, endless aisle kind of concepts. All those will increase, right? You will also have more. I don't think that even in 10 years you will see in-store transactions go below 70%. I think it will still be, today it's above 80%. I think it will still be above 70%, even in 10 years' time from today. So I don't think that will happen. But of course, online will continue to increase a bit, little bit every year. And you will finally find sustainable ways of delivery from those store, because right now fulfillment from store is a nightmare in terms of cost. But slowly but surely, retailers are finding ways which are the right compromise of, low enough cost with a good enough customer experience. Because at the moment I feel like it's lopsided. Either you provide a great customer experience and make a massive loss, right? Or you provide a shit customer experience at a somewhat profitable, not too profitable level. I think you will start to see that in 10 years, the infrastructure, the users' own awareness, the excitement towards these will mean that you will see a balance of some kind.
Yeah. And for any aspiring founders watching this today, what key pieces of advice would you give them? So anyone that's looking to start their own tech company, what are the key pieces of advice you would give them?
I always say just do it, to borrow from Nike. But I think that, the main advice, I think I read a great tweet from Naval Ravikant, who said that most people spend time to save money. And what you should actually do is spend money to save time. Now, you need to have money to spend money, but the even at a very starting level as a founder, when you don't have a lot of money, it's still very important you realize the time you have at your hands.
Yep.
Right? That is your most valuable asset. That's why I say start. As soon as you can, just go ahead and start. Because, there's no time like now. And the more you start, the sooner you start, the more you will learn by doing what you want to, and actually understanding what it's actually like to start a company. However, while I say that, I should also say that you should start with something that you just can't stop thinking about.
Yeah.
Because it has to be an idea that you're obsessed with, that you really love truly, for you to spend the effort and time for long enough, right? If it's not something you love, unfortunately, you will give up too soon, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard and there's so little money in it at the beginning that's very tough, at least as a first-time founder, right? That it's very tough to keep going if you don't absolutely love what you're doing. So that's very important, because if you don't find that, rather than thinking or starting something in a field or with an idea you're not super keen on, join someone else.
Yeah.
I would instead recommend you to join someone who's doing something that you love. Right? Doesn't have to be your own to begin with. Do that, because it's important you do what you love, and your idea will come.
Yeah. So do you think that's the key thing then, for picking something that you're passionate about?
Exactly. You have to love what you do, because otherwise it's not, the money is not rewarding enough to fill the gap caused by the insane amount of work that you have to do, the way in which you have to take the mental stress, the physical stress on your body, that it's the money is not going to fill you.
Definitely. Because from doing some research online, I see you had some other ideas before.
Yeah, 23 other ideas before MishiPay.
So is the reason you went for this one, does that link back to what you're saying about being passionate about it?
Exactly. I got a very good piece of advice again when I was at university. My professor, Ichazo del Palacio, was she still is actually the professor, visiting professor at UCL. She teaches a course called Entrepreneurial Finance, and in her class she had a panel of entrepreneurs. And in that, one of the guys, I think he was the founder of La Salon, and he told me, when I spoke to him, I tried to ask him about starting a startup, etc. And he said you have to absolutely be passionate about it, because so that's why with the other ideas, while they were nice, I was exploring them.
Yeah.
The way I knew that this was what I wanted to do was because I just couldn't stop thinking about it. When I came home, I started working on it, and working on it was fun. I enjoyed it more than anything else I was doing, which is why for me also at the time it was so easy to reject the job offers I was working so hard to get and go straight for MishiPay, because I was realizing, like, if it's not just supposed to be about the occasional all-nighter and, working otherwise to the weekend, then this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Definitely. So when you got this idea, what were the first things you had to do to actually start a company? Like, what was the process? You got the idea, you're thinking about it. I'm guessing you're doing some research first?
I feel like I did it like all at once. I didn't do it such a fixed way. I had the idea. I started to talk to people about it. That's one of the good things I did. I think oftentimes people are too secretive about it, thinking people will steal.
Ideas, yeah.
And there's maybe 1 or 2% ideas in the world that are like that. Most are not. Most get better when you talk to people about it. So I spoke to my professors at UCL. I had access to some great mentors who I'd met because I was helping out from UCL side, visiting places like Techstars, Barclays Accelerator with Techstars, where I met Leanne Kemp, one of my mentors, or I spoke to also a few others, like another professor at UCL called Simon Hume, who introduced me to a guy also called Trevor Jones. And these people were some of the early people I spoke to about the idea, right? And as I started to get their feedback, I started to realize, okay, this is, the right zone. This is what I'm supposed to do. Also, co-founder wise, that was a tough one for me because Tanvi was in India. And I wasn't sure that would work. But eventually, when I needed help and she came on, a week after starting, she was sure that she wanted to do this.
Yeah.
She rejected her promotion that she had because the company she was working for was going to get acquired and came on full time. So those kinds of things happen. But in the meantime, when I just started, yes, I did a little bit of research, finding out what's out there, where is RFID technology today, what kind of POS systems are getting used inside the retail stores. But I started building almost straight away. That was the benefit. Like, I started to look online for how to create a mobile app. I started to consider, how to configure RFID at the time, what kind of POS systems, what kind of files should we be expecting. So even though it was a long time before we actually integrated with any retailer, about 2.5 years after I thought of the idea, at least, that we started to first integrate with a major retailer. Those early days helped with showing that what I was thinking of was possible. That was all I was trying to prove, that it is actually possible. Because if it is, then I had no doubt that it was valuable to retailers as well as their users. So that's how I went about it.
Yeah, and how did you approach fundraising?
So I went also back and forth on this a little bit. So initially I thought I have to raise funds almost immediately, right, to get that done. Then I went back saying, okay, this is taking too long while I'm losing time on building the business. So I have to build the business and the funds will come. It's really sort of a middle ground between the two. You have to focus on the business first, no doubt, but you can't be closed off and hoping investors will look in every nook and cranny to find you, right? That happens to very few startups out there and with amazing success early on, which we did not have. It took us time. As I said, we were probably too early to the market when we started. So it took us 3-4 years for the market even to start looking at scan and go, self-checkout, etc. as a priority. So until that time, I still needed to find investors, still needed to bring on people. And retail, as you said, it requires a very high standard inside the store. Because if you're scanning an item and anything goes wrong, even a little bit, right? You're abandoning the app and going straight to the to the normal checkout counter. Because that's how you've done it all your life, right? It's what you know. So you will abandon this new way immediately. Online, you don't have another choice to buy that item, right? Let's say I want the shirt. I have to stay on the website, find a way to make it work. I'll try twice, thrice. So on the app, our what's it called? The room for failure is very, very small, right? The margin for error is really small. So we had to build good systems, which means big upfront investment. And that needed us to start funding. So the good thing was that, having been at UCL, having had some good support early on, the first round was a £150,000 round, which was a pre-seed supported by friends, families, and those angels like my professor from UCL and others who supported us. It also helps, no doubt, that both Tanvi and I did not need to worry about our day-to-day expenses, right? We were able to get support from family to manage that. Because I fully appreciate that without that, who knows, I might have had to go for one of those job offers.
Yeah.
And I might not have been able to do that. And unfortunately, that is the situation for a lot of people. So there's a big element of luck, a big element of, how much your family's previous wealth can support you, or any other ways that you can get support, which has an impact on the startup that doesn't have anything to do with your own skill or ability in today. So that was what we were happy with. And then while we were building that pre-seed, we started our conversations with Naute Capital. 11 months later, they gave us a term sheet, and that led to our seed round of 1.85 million pounds. And from there, the funding route got a little bit easier in some ways,
Yeah.
a little harder in other ways because we needed more money.
Yeah, I suppose the more traction you're getting as well,
Yes.
the more investors are taking a look at you and taking you seriously.
Correct. But that 1.5 year from starting to getting investment, that period would not have been possible without support of family.
Yeah, sounds like you've got a really good support circle. And like
Yes.
you said, there's quite a lot of talented people I know that have great ideas, but they're just not really able to take the risk,
Yes.
or they can't really get the capital initially to get off the ground. A lot of people say that first investment can often be the most important one.
Yeah, that's also important with the idea you're thinking about. That the idea you're thinking about, the way I look at it, it has to be, that's another advice for first-time founders would be, think about something that you know the end goal, and you don't know every step between now and there, but you know at least your next your first two steps, and every time you go one step further, your next two steps. At least you know the 2 steps further in front of you. So let's say tomorrow I want to build a flying car. I have to know how to start today, the first 2 steps. Because if I want to build a flying car, I have no idea right now.
Yeah.
With that kind of project, unless I'm a serial entrepreneur with a lot of successes under my belt, I learn about it, I start, maybe it's possible. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. You have to know your steps, because while the funding conversations are going on, you can't just sit and wait for people to give you the funding. You have to still be doing something. You have to create traction. Even if it's not with direct B2B sales, with something to prove that there's interest in what you're building. That's early on, that's what they're looking at. There's no one who can properly check the unit economics and do everything's going to be theoretical at that point. You need some real traction, which comes through you having conversations, going out there, trying to see what the idea is worth.
Definitely. We spoke a lot today about your journey so far, like how the company started, the impact you've had with the products. But I suppose the big question is, what is next for MishiPay? What does the future look like?
I think the future, as I said, for us, we've conquered the fact that in the stores where we are live, we can be the majority, 90% runs that. Now, it's about getting that in the cities where we are live. So London, Dubai, Miami, in these cities, we want to be the dominant method of checkout. That's the next level for us. That comes when we have a merchant network where you can use MishiPay multiple times in your week. You wake up in the morning for coffee, you use MishiPay. You're going lunchtime to buy a meal deal, you use MishiPay. You're going night shopping with your family, you use MishiPay. That's the next step for us in our overall master plan to conquering the world.
So the plan is to tackle these key markets first.
Yes.
If you happen to expand with your existing clients.
And get to a merchant network where independently, if we acquire users, they have enough places to shop with MishiPay, that we can keep them and retain them.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Guys, it's been so good speaking with you both. Honestly, you've got a fascinating story. You've got a great business. It's safe to say the future's bright. And I'm going to watch your company with eager eyes. And I'm sure you'll continue to be very successful.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
guys.